Hope everyone's doing well. I'm filming in my bedroom because at the moment that is kind of where I live most of my life, which I'll explain why in a little while. So if you hear a lot of noise, for some reason my neighbours are being super loud. I seem to have kids playing outside in the dark and then people this side of me. So if you hear just random noises, I apologise. So it's a bit of a different video and I may not even end up posting it. It depends. I've tried to film this twice tonight already, and if you can't tell by the state of me, I literally end up in tears, which is not really what I want. So, because then also you can't really tell what I'm saying. I'm one of those kind of criers, my voice goes all squeaky and weird. So I'm trying for a third time, and then if this doesn't work, I'm just gonna leave it. So I'm fortunate enough that some of my followers on Instagram and on YouTube that I don't actually know in person, I consider you guys as like virtual friends, have actually been like checking on me recently because I've not been posting so much and some other bits and pieces. So I'm here to explain why, and I'm hoping that this video, that something positive can come out of what's happened, and that this video will kind of help someone else avoid going through this if they can. So I'll tell you what it is. Well, there is a trigger warning to this. I'll be covering a few different things, but it is a lot about mental health. So I just want to warn you if you're kind of triggered by things like eating disorders or abuse or anything like that, just obviously don't watch. That's the last thing I want. I want to try and help people avoid what I've gone through rather than make somebody ill. So leave if you need to. So a couple of weeks ago I had a nervous breakdown, which is why I've kind of been absent with my videos and absent on my social media and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that led up to it that now that I look back I probably could have handled differently or avoided, but I didn't think it was really going to get on top of me until it literally just, I can't even explain it. I've suffered mental health, particularly when I had my daughter. I had postnatal depression really badly, and it actually led me to a suicide attempt and self-harming and all that stuff. But this was on a whole different level. And I think because when you have something like postnatal depression, it's all your hormones and things like that. It's kind of a little easier to have a reason for it in your head, if you know what I mean, and like this kind of light at the end of the tunnel that it will go away. But I think because I'm on sertraline and I've had therapy and all this stuff, the fact that then I still managed to sink into like the darkest place I've ever been in my life. It was definitely scary. So I mean, a couple of things that set it off was, I think it's been a build up. It's probably been coming for quite a while, I would think. So a couple of things are things like I have endometriosis, and they've put me on some medication for that. So first of all, that took ages to get the diagnosis for that, and I mean, some days I would be in so much pain I couldn't walk, so I would have to let my daughter down if like I'd promised I'd take her to the park and things like that. Some days it was so bad I couldn't drive, so again I couldn't take her anywhere, and I was like relying on people to just drop like nappies off and things like that, which is not what you want. So I eventually got the diagnosis anyway, and then they gave me a type of pill like to stop periods, which I'm meant to be on for 6 months, so that stops the bleeding, and then they'll do laser and then we'll go from there. But it hasn't, and for 3 months now, I've literally, actually over 3 months, I think I've had about 2 weeks where I've not bled. So now I've gone from having like no, to having period and it being painful to now literally not stopping bleeding, which obviously makes me feel drained, makes me feel dizzy and all the rest of it. And COVID seems to fob everybody off. Like I still can't get seen, or my doctor, like, kind of say, well, we didn't prescribe it, the specialist, so you'll have to go back to them, and it's just not easy to get appointments. So there's that. Along with that, I have a had pneumonia. When COVID first started, I had pneumonia. This is when COVID was like kind of known for it being in China, but we didn't know it had like come here yet. So it could have been COVID because I had it for 15 weeks and all my blood tests were like kind of all over the place. And they couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting better and everything. So it's possible it was COVID. We just didn't really know about it then. But either way, whether it was pneumonia, COVID, or something else, it hasn't really left my chest, like this side of my chest. So a year ago, I went to the hospital because my doctor wanted me to get an x-ray because of how bad my chest was sounding all the time. And they've realised that my lung is actually deformed, which apparently can be from birth, but apparently you can have deformities like that, but it will take like an illness to trigger it for it to actually become a problem. Otherwise you'll just kind of live with it and probably won't even know you've got it. So that was the case with my lung. But they said it was a bad deformity and it really needed looking into. That was a year ago. Obviously my appointments were constantly being cancelled because of COVID, and then I was told to shield because of COVID and all this stuff, so I was like last on the list for appointments. So I've managed to have that done, and I was supposed to have results within 4 weeks. That was 9 weeks ago. So, you know, things like lying down to go to sleep are not easy. It feels like something's literally sitting on my chest, where it'll feel like, I don't know, like John Cena is, you don't know who that is, he's a huge wrestler, he's like literally like squeezing me like this from behind, and I cannot breathe. So when I get stressed out and I get overwhelmed, I do get panic attacks. But then they're even more intense because you obviously like kind of, you can't quite get your breath, but I can get even less breath, which then in turn makes me panic. And it's like this, it's like on a hamster and I can't get off it, which obviously is also draining. Also have a cyst on my brain. I can't say the word of it because I'll sound like an idiot. But it's on this side of my brain, so I get a lot of headaches that like go into my face. So again, it's just a lot of chronic pain that already puts you in a bad place. And then my daughter has a few issues of her own. She's losing sight in her eye, and I obviously, me and her dad, we're not together, but we work well together when it comes to our daughter. We, you know, push for all these appointments. And then with COVID, she started this year, she had water infections, UTIs, like she wasn't toilet trained at the time, and they just were getting worse and worse, and the doctor wouldn't see her. It was all like done over the phone. So it turned out that he'd given her the wrong antibiotics and then gave her different ones and the wrong ones again, so the infection just wasn't clearing up. And to cut a really long story short, in January and part of February, she ended up in hospital 4 times. She ended up going in with this infection, which they tried to send us home. They sent us home the day before she was with her dad, and they sent her home. And then through the night, like I couldn't get her temperature down. She was just screaming in pain. So I phoned her dad and he got us, and we were just straight back in. And then they were still going to discharge us, but I insisted that they got a water sample, which was fortunate because within about 2 hours it became, this part I cry, literally the worst time of my life. She ended up with, I can't even explain to you how horrible it was, but it's kind of like watching someone have a seizure or a fit. That's the only way I can describe it, really. But she ended up with sepsis because the infection, I guess, had gotten so bad, and her body, I mean, she was 3, her body just wasn't going to be fighting it, and she had COVID on top of it. And then obviously because of COVID rules, nobody could come and see her. But because I'd obviously been there with her, we both had to be isolated in a room, which was, I thought at the time, better because obviously I can make sure she gets rest and you've not got other people and other kids and stuff like that around. But what I didn't realise is that because obviously she was COVID, I then had to be classed as it. Because I was on a children's ward, they wouldn't test me, so I just had to be assumed that I was also COVID positive, which meant that her dad then couldn't come into the hospital and swap over because obviously he would be near someone with COVID, so I had to do it all by myself. But then we're kind of in this room on our own, so when you're in there for like a week, it's not easy. And obviously they're coming in all the time to wake her up because the temperature would suddenly shoot high and she'd be having like a fit on me. It was like her body trying to regulate the temperature and things like that. But obviously I'm not a medical person. I don't necessarily know that. And when it just starts happening, like when she's lying on you and it starts happening at 3 o'clock in the morning and you've got no one else in the room and you're pressing the button and you're having to wait for someone to come, it is absolutely terrifying. And she would just be so like she couldn't eat, and she was literally thrown up in the bed. And then like they did their best, but they wouldn't like change the bed sheets and things, so I was having to do that. So it's like she's obviously got like the thing in her arm for a fluid, so she's like hooked up to a machine. I'm trying to like hold her, she's screaming, trying to get off these sheets, wipe it down, put stuff back on. It's a whole lot. And I also couldn't leave that room. We had a bathroom in there, but if she needed milk or anything like that, I wasn't actually allowed to leave the room to go and get them. So I'd have to call, and sometimes obviously they would be dealing with other children, so it would take a while. In which case she's worked herself up, which would then lead back to vomiting, and then the temperature would go, and it's kind of this vicious cycle. And on top of that, she couldn't bring anything from home because they had to assume that it was going to be contaminated with COVID or infected by COVID, however you want to say it. So any of the things that she was asking for that would give her comfort, she wasn't allowed to have, which was heartbreaking when your child just wants the things that make them feel better. Luckily, I have amazing parents who went and bought a load of clothes, because we couldn't even bring clothes. Like, I had no underwear, we couldn't bring anything. They went and got all new clothes for her. My mum packed me some of her clothes. They got toys for her just to make it that little bit better. And obviously I don't blame the nurses for that. If there's any nurses watching this or anything, I'm sure you're all too busy too, but if you are, then obviously I know you all did your best. It's just, it was hard for me in that situation. And obviously I hadn't expected to need my medication, because I thought we'd be in, she'd have antibiotics, would be out. So, and my sertraline I didn't have, so obviously my depression was coming back. And then we got back from that, and she was just terrified. Like, every time that, I didn't want to say how much it had really messed me up, but I think watching your child essentially fight for her life, with the sepsis and then the COVID on top, and then you're isolated and all these things. And obviously I'm angry because her dad and I both were like calling all the time. We were taking her to be seen. We were like begging people to see. We were arguing that no, she doesn't need to be discharged. And then we end up in that situation. It's horrible. So there's a lot of anger as well. But then, like, if the door went, obviously she would just wake up with being pricked with needles and all sorts, but she would wake up as soon as the door went, like screaming at me not to let people get her and all that, and it was horrible. And then only a week later she was really poorly again, so I had to take her back, and I'd avoided taking her back for about a day, because every time I was like, I think we need to go see the doctor, she would literally have a panic attack, and she's 3. It's not only scary, but I can't tell her how to calm it down because she just doesn't understand. So then we had to go back, and then she'd caught another infection somehow, and her markers were going like off the charts, but they couldn't find this infection. So obviously that was incredibly scary. And obviously every time a doctor came near her, she would scream, because she would remember the last time when she was in all the pain and having like needles everywhere and keep being swabbed for COVID. And it was not good. It was not nice. And again, I had to do most of that by myself. They did at that point isolate us again, just because she'd been COVID positive beforehand, but they did allow her dad and I kind of had explained just how badly I'd struggled and that I hadn't really had a break. So obviously I was literally up with her every time she was up, and that I was just going to fall apart. So they did allow her dad to come and swap for a night. But still, that was an awful lot to go through. And that kind of affected my eating, like affected my anxiety. Even now, if she gets a bit of a UTI or anything, I instantly panic, because my doctor still won't see people. You could go there to get your flu jab, but he can't see you for anything else, if that makes any sense. Doesn't really make sense to me. But yeah, so I couldn't. Now when she has anything, I instantly panic. I do, because I don't want to go back down that road again. So obviously that her health on top of mine, and then she's losing the sight in her eye, which again we were told that we could probably work on it with like eye patches and things like that. And then when we took her in March, April time, it looks like it's gone. And they said it could, and I was like, well, how is that possible? Because you told us there was a chance. and they said it's possible because she's had sepsis. Like, her body will take a long time to recover. She's little, that could have affected it. So then it went from me covering her eye and her saying, oh, it looks funny, which I think she meant blurry, but obviously she wouldn't know that word yet, to saying it's all black and I can't see a thing, and my fingers were like, I don't know, see, they're like this close, and she's like, it's all black, I don't see anything. Yeah, that's heartbreaking. And then at a recent appointment, you know, they were like, well, you need to try the eye patches again. And I said, well, no, because you've told me there's literally nothing in there. I'm not going to distress her if there's no need. And they basically said, well, just on the off chance that we can get something back, you should, because if you don't and she loses the sight in the good eye, or any sight in the good eye, she won't be able to drive, she won't be able to work. And now I've had this other enormous pressure put back on me to potentially cover my child's eye that she can see out of. And there's a good chance that she's actually blind in this eye. They're just saying, you know, just let's just be on the safe side and try. But if she's genuinely blind, then they want me to literally do this for 48 hours at a time, sit her there where she can't see a thing. She's going to be terrified, and she just turned 4 a week ago. So she can't watch the TV, she can't play, she can't, like, it's just not going to happen. And then I don't appreciate they kind of put it on me, well, if they don't, you know, and she ends up losing some sight in that eye and she can't drive, and, you know, she may not thank you. And it's like, that's not fair, because I was arguing with you for these appointments, like, you know, back when you were all bothered about COVID and nothing else seemed to matter. So it's kind of like it's all put on me, and it's a massive stress. It really is. Then I recently was pregnant, and because of my endometriosis, they said that could be difficult. Did I want more kids? Because at the time I was so fed up with the pain, I was like, just give me a hysterectomy. And they said, well, we obviously can't redo that because you're too young, like you'd have to have multiple surgeries before we went down that route. So then when I was pregnant, we were very happy. Now when I was pregnant with my daughter, I had like 3 months of bleeding, and it turned out I'd never heard of this before, but I had hemorrhaging in my womb. So I was constantly bleeding. So like, whether it was a miscarriage or not, I never knew. It was just bleeding every day, and I was just hoping that there was going to be something there at the 12-week scan, and that's kind of what it was. There was nothing they could do for me. So this time around, I'd started bleeding, and I thought, well, because obviously I'd stopped bleeding, this pill had been making me bleed all the time, and then I'd stopped, and I was like, well, okay. So my partner Sean had told me to take a pregnancy test, and I did, and it was positive. And then a day or so into it, I'd started spotting again, but I thought, well, I had that with Jasmine, I'm not going to stress, not going to worry. And then a couple of days later, I woke up, and I just felt different. My stomach was really bad, my back was really bad. And obviously I've been pregnant before, and I know they're all different, but it didn't feel like, oh, my body's changing. It felt like something was wrong. So I went to the bathroom, and my pyjama bottoms were just covered in blood. There's blood on the bed sheet. There was so much blood. So I took another test, and another test, and another test, and I'd miscarried. Which, you know, I know people have miscarriages, and I don't mean sound insensitive, but I've always thought, you know, it happens for a reason, so you just try again. But that was insensitive of me. I've never said that to them, but that's what I've thought. You know, if your body's rejected it, it should be a good thing, because your baby may not have been okay, and it may have had a horrible life. I've ate my words, because going through it myself, and obviously because of my endometriosis and my pregnancy with Jasmine was really rough, I do blame myself. And I obviously now wonder, I think once you find, like, I wasn't bothered about more kids until I met Sean, and then obviously I wanted another one. So now this kind of, obviously every day that I'm still bleeding and they're not sorting anything out, it's not just the fact that it's draining, it's the fact that I then worry what my future will hold, if I can have another baby or not. Yeah. So there's that. And then I guess just, stuff from my past from not resolved. Like when I went to therapy for my postnatal depression, I literally focused on being a mom. I focused on the fact that I couldn't breastfeed, the fact that, I had a horrible pregnancy. They messed up at the hospital. They should have stitched me up and they didn't, and I lost a lot of blood. Things like that. But I guess we never really went deeper into it, because we didn't need to. So the way it works here is you get 12 months of therapy and then it's like you're kind of off on your own. That was what had happened. But I felt like I discussed everything I needed to about pregnancy and motherhood and all that. But I guess I never went further into it. So I've not had many relationships, but I've had abusive relationships, as in everything but sexual abuse. So I've had financial abuse, I've physical abuse, emotional, mental. I've been controlled. I've had my phone taken off me. I've had it taken off me for weeks. I've lost friends, all sorts of things. And I guess I've probably not really ever dealt with that. So I now realise, looking back, that I've kind of carried that into every relationship. So the slightest thing, it's kind of like a trigger, and I just react. Like I react really bad. And probably very often I create the situation, I think, because I freaked out so badly, and they're like, what the heck is wrong? And obviously a lot of people will tell you if they've been like physically abused and mentally abused, that it's the mental that really takes a toll on you. And it is like, it used to be like a very bubbly, very like strong and whatever person, but I think slowly that's just been chipped away at me a lot. And I found that a lot of my friends kind of weren't really there for me when I had my miscarriage and stuff. Some of the comments that I got, they weren't very nice. And then we were planning our wedding, and I asked someone to be a bridesmaid who has been like really good to me, a really good friend, known them a long time. And that was, let me think, 5 or 6 weeks ago now. And I'm still waiting for her to check her diary to see if she's on holiday or not. We haven't really spoken since, so obviously that's kind of hurt a lot. When I broke up with Jasmine's dad, I was single for pretty much 2 years. And during that time, I got to rekindle, like a lot of my friends before that were guy friends. And obviously, you get in a relationship, you can kind of drift from guy friends, same as guys probably drift from girlfriends. And so I got some of them back, and they'd been really supportive and stuff like that. And obviously we had COVID, so nobody could be trying to bed anybody. So they were like genuine friendships that I've had, some of them for 15 years, and it's literally been a platonic friendship, at least on my side. Now I'm not so sure on theirs. Because then things like, once I got engaged to Sean and we started planning a wedding, and we sent out invites, they were kind of like coming up with excuses to not show up, or they kind of messaged me, some of them, and were like, well, yeah, like, we're not really friends, I literally just wanted to sleep with you. And then in my head I'm like, well, have you been friends with me for like 5 years? Because I had a boyfriend at some point during that, then I was single, you said nothing, and then a boyfriend now. And it's not even that anything would have happened, it isn't like that. It's more that, like, I guess a lot of my trust has gone. It's like, how do you fake a friendship for 4 or 5 years that you're not getting anything out of? I mean, I understand, people have friends with benefits, but that wasn't the situation. So, like, sometimes it would be like, come around to watch a movie, and we'd literally talk for 6 or 7 hours about just life in general. Like, there was no hinting at anything. It was literally purely life. I'd talk about their relationship or mine, or their job, or something I want to do. And then it's like, but why? So, like, I think now I question my judgment a lot. Obviously I also feel like I'm not valued as a friend, that somebody's like, oh, got another boyfriend, bugger that, like, and the same with like some of my girlfriends that are kind of just drifted a little bit. Like, when I've kind of needed to like kind of talk, they don't respond. But then if they want to ask me to go out drinking, which I don't do, then it's like constant messaging, or they want to tell me about some new guy they've met, it's constant messaging. But when I'm actually like, I'm worried, like I feel more depressed than I did before. Like, a lot of times I wake up and I don't want to get out of bed, I don't want to be here, and it's just, you can see they've read it and they just blank it. I guess I kind of question my worth to people as well. Particularly, obviously, if people don't even care about my mental state, then how much of a good friend was I to them? So it's questioned my worth to some of my girlfriends and ex-girlfriends and ex-guy-friends. So that's not been great either. And then I take, obviously all this happened in a short space of time, so I take a lot of it out on myself, I guess. And I guess it is a form of self-harming in a way, which is that it affects my eating, because I've suffered anorexia and bulimia, so it kind of just goes back into that. Which obviously, if you're already drained from bleeding, you have like chronic illnesses and things, it's a vicious cycle. So I won't go too much into it because it does involve other people, but there was kind of a bit of a comment made that perhaps I should postpone the wedding because people were really worried about my mental state. And I knew it had been bad because I'd respected my doctor to see if I was bipolar, and I was waiting to hear back, and my medication had been increased. But I think that I probably didn't realise how bad I actually was. So then when I found out kind of this suggestion had been made behind my back, I saw it that because I might have bipolar, I wasn't good enough to marry someone. People didn't have faith in me to get well. It was always going to be used against me. It all just hit me, and I've never lost it with so many people, but I did. Yeah, like I really lost it with so many people. I was so hurt. Fortunately, those are straightened out with people now, but despite that, like, I didn't obviously know I was gonna have a breakdown that day, but I did. And if you've never had one, or you think you might be having one, you kind of feel like you can't get a handle on your emotions. Like for me, I sobbed for hours and hours, and I mean hours. I could not stop. I couldn't eat. I felt sick. It felt like, basically, they explained it to me that it's basically like your body's just flooded with all these hormones and emotions, and it basically just took its toll on my body. It felt like I'd been in a car crash. So my back and my shoulders, my hips, it was agony. It was horrible. I couldn't sleep, so I'd increase my medication, so then it would give me insomnia. So obviously that wasn't very nice. And then kind of I've had people be really supportive and then people not be so supportive. So if I've had, say, a little bit of an issue with something, I don't mean that I've kicked off, I mean that I've kind of made a comment. I tend to get like, like, are you still on your medication, or if you stop taking your medication, or you're on a breakdown again. I'm now getting this place where I feel like my mental health is going to be an excuse for people's behaviour all the time, or I'm never going to be taken seriously. Like, if if someone's upset me, it's going to be like, oh, you're overreacting, if you took your medication. And I guess now, I've never had a problem getting help for mental health because I've had it. It happens to all of us, especially we've just been through a pandemic. But I do understand why people don't really talk about it, because now I'm really scared it's going to be used as an excuse. And I do feel like people look at me differently. I don't mean that people like treat me like, wrap me in bubble wrap. I don't know, I feel like they do just treat me a little bit differently, I guess. And I mean, that being said, I've had some really nice, really supportive people who've been amazing, bought me flowers, checked on me virtually every day, and they're going through their own stuff. So I do, you know who you are, and if you're watching this, I really do appreciate it. I love you tons. But yeah, it's been a really scary time. Like, I'm in therapy again, and I'm on my medication. But I guess I just wanted to talk about it to explain why I've kind of been absent, and also to hopefully help anyone else know that you can have a lot of things and you can feel like like people would say like, you're so strong, how do you deal with all this like chronic pain, you just get on with it? And it's like, well, I do just get on with it because you have to. But I guess that I hide a lot of it. Like, they don't see me go in the bathroom, break down in tears because I virtually can't stand up, and then I'll go and play with my daughter on the floor. They just see me playing with my daughter on the floor. um and I'm very good at, like, with my daughter, I will argue on the phone for her. When it comes to me and they're like, yeah, we don't have the results, so we'll just get in touch, and I'll go, okay, and I leave it at that. Another thing that happened was I had pre-cancer in my cervix, which is now the second time. And it was waiting for results for that, and then I caught an infection from the procedure, and it's just a lot. And where I normally would like argue, how have they caught an infection? Has my daughter caught an infection, or my mom, or whatever? For me, I don't really advocate so much. I guess I don't value myself as much as I value other people. So I tend to let people kind of get away with it, or I just be fobbed off and wait for results, or wait for procedures or whatever. And I think that I kind of just want to say that if you're going through stuff, and I think that, like, society now, I think it's, like, people are expected too much. Like, I think that there's a lot of pressure, for example, for a woman, and I know there's a lot for men too, but I'm saying for women, because obviously I'm one, so I can say about that, is, I think people expect you to be, like, really educated, but also, like, work a full-time job, keep a home perfect, cook for your husband, keep him satisfied, keep the kids clean, keep them satisfied, somehow take time for yourself, to make sure you look good and make sure you don't snap. And if you're early, it's like no one cares, you've got all this stuff to do. And I think that it's the same as, like, almost like kind of exhausting yourself, or having like wearing yourself out and all this. I find that it's almost like, or having stress is almost like a status, almost like a celebrity status. I feel like you're considered like the best mom if you run yourself into the ground, and you're considered the best mom if you work a job and you take care of the kids, and your home is immaculate. And I think that a lot of the time it's just too much pressure on us. And I think it's the same with, mental health. I think, yeah, you're depressed, okay, we get it, but carry on. And I think a lot of people kind of will say, yeah, I'm depressed, or I'm anxious, or I'm stressed, or I'm overwhelmed, but then they'll keep doing the same things, myself included, because I think we're kind of expected to. And it's almost like when people are going, like, oh, you're doing so well, it's almost like a badge of honour that you're struggling, but you're going to keep going. And, like, it has to stop, because if you're in that situation, you will keep going until you break down. And I'm fortunate that I had my daughter with me that day. Fortunate and not fortunate, because I didn't want to be here at all. And when I had that breakdown, it was just, I just couldn't get myself back. This was only a couple of weeks ago, and I remember it very well. But if she hadn't been here, if she'd been with her dad, I wouldn't be here now. I know that for a fact, because I couldn't see a way out of it. I couldn't see a way back. Obviously, her being here, I would never do that. I would never leave her where she, can't protect herself or defend herself, or allow her to see anything like that. So she really is my saving grace. She really is. But I know a lot of people that might be struggling don't have that. I do have a good family, although I don't appreciate the things that were said that kind of pushed me over the edge. I do believe it was probably coming from a good place. I'd just rather it had been said to me. But I do know that they had, they would be doing what they thought was right. But a lot of people don't have families, or don't have supportive families. So it's so easy that you could just slip into it. And I always used to say that anyone that took their own life was selfish, because you just put that pain to someone else. But really, I think suicide is like the last symptom of depression. I think that it's very easy if you get into that place where, not even a breakdown, but just into that such a dark place, that it's so easy that you don't see a way out. That's kind of like the relief, the taking your life. But I don't need to be that way for anyone, because the world needs all of us. That's why we're here. You may not find why you're here yet. I don't really know why I'm here yet. I'm still figuring that out. I thought I knew, and obviously my breakdown has just stripped all my confidence, all my self-esteem. It's fed into my eating disorder again. I second guess everything. I zone out a lot. I'm still very easily overwhelmed. The slightest thing can overwhelm me. And I find that I just kind of go through the days at the moment kind of like a zombie. Like I'm engaged, but I'm not, like I'm present, but I'm not really engaged, if that makes any sense. But I do know that obviously, I mean, I didn't have a breakdown, I had my daughter, but I was pretty bad. And I know that obviously, if I had taken my own life, I wouldn't have, like, her first word was mom. And, you know, all the time, I used to love when she'd fall asleep on my chest. I'd miss all of that. I got to be the one here when she took her first steps. I'd have missed that. I'd have missed so many things. And now she sings this little song where it's called I Love You Mommy. And it's I Love You Mommy, and about how she loves me even more than she loves anyone else. You know, I'd miss that. She started learning to read, and I'd miss that. She pretends to be a doctor. I was in A&E the weekend, so a couple of days ago, because my stress has basically led to muscle spasm and all this was swollen. So they gave me the best medication that literally spaced you out. I mean, we'd all be happy if we could just bring that home. But they didn't give me a bandage, so she was making bandages for me and everything. And I'd have just missed out on all of that if I hadn't gotten well. Obviously, I mean, this video would be really long if I went into everything. You know, I've modelled in the past, and I have done lingerie and stuff, and I've had boyfriends that have got with, or dates, or whatever you want to say it. I was trying not to throw anyone under the bus here, and who knew that? I've not kept it secret. I mean, it was on my social media, so, and this was before I had my daughter. And then once you get deep in a relationship, they stop it all. Bear in mind, that was my way of earning money. That was my job. So then I lost a lot of independence, and it wasn't just like, oh, I love you, you know, don't do it. It was kind of like, well, it's just a lot of things like, oh, I'll be embarrassed to go out with you, or you know, I've had a lot of boyfriends say that they're embarrassed to go out with me, or that like they feel that they've downgraded. And my self-esteem back then had got so low that I just stayed. Like, I used to be the girl that if you even looked at me like you've just looked at someone else and she's hotter, I'd punch your lights out. Like, you'd wake up in clothes would be out of fashion, you'd be knocked out for that long. And yeah, I think that just a lot of abusive relationships and abusive friendships have just chipped away at me until I eventually got to a point where I heard one or two comments and that was it. I snapped and ended up with a nervous breakdown that 2.5 weeks on, I am still feeling the effects of. My body still feels broken. I still feel bruised all over. I feel exhausted because, you know, although I know I don't want to do anything to myself, because I said I would have missed so many things with my daughter, and I know I'll miss those things, and obviously she would know now if I wasn't around. I don't want to do that to her. But it's like every day is a chore. Like, some days I wake up and I feel much better, but some days, more often than not at the moment, obviously the breakdown is still quite fresh, I wake up and I don't want to be here, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm just exhausted, and I just want to sleep. And I find that trying to put a brave face on, or trying to keep, you know, like, oh, okay, I said I'll take it to the pot, like, I'm going to do this, still doing those things, just sometimes it's so much effort, you know, instead of just having the day where, you know, you might be a bit tired but you can take the kids to the park and it's a bit knackering but you did it. It's like a whole different scale. It's almost like I take it to the park, but I've probably ran like 10 miles to get there, probably crawled over broken glass, ran 10 miles back, and I don't know, I'm gonna put some humour into it, but fought a dragon at the end and scorched my arm. Literally feels like that. So sometimes trying to kind of just get on with everything is more draining. So I have gone back into meditation. I've been reading self-help articles and things like that. I've been trying to identify things that trigger me, like when I used to model, I went to Australia and I was on the phone to my mum because I was coming home in a few days and we were just checking flights and stuff. And while she was on the phone, I was sexually assaulted. And I didn't really realise until probably I had my daughter how angry that makes me. Like, if anyone did that to me now, I'd kill them. Without a doubt, I would kill them. I'd kill them and hand myself in. It's just, if I saw someone doing it to someone else, I'd kill them and hand myself in. I think being like so far from home when I was only 19, so I'm 33 now, so it was a long time ago. I have not, I mean, I didn't realise there were probably flashbacks. So my therapist thinks I have PTSD from some of the abuse I had and from this sexual assault, where I kind of will have dreams where, you know, like Jasmine and I might be in the house and someone is like trying to hurt me, and then it's almost like I switch and I'm like Jasmine hiding in a cupboard or in a closet, seeing the abuse happen. And I did witness a lot of abuse in my childhood, but that's not for me to discuss. That's someone else's story, so I won't discuss that here. But I didn't realise those things and things like sexual assault. I see that again, but it's usually I'm watching and it's happening to somebody else, and like a woman I've never met and a man I've never met, and I'm just kind of observed. Like, it's just like I'm kind of in the room, but I'm not in the room, like a fly on the wall or something. I didn't realise that all those things were connected to incidents that have happened, and that perhaps I've not dealt with them or my mind hasn't dealt with them. Because I've always put it down to, you know what, I'm lucky. Like, a lot of women get worse and have to then live with what's happened to them, and it messes them up. And some women have that happen to them and are murdered, or, you know, trafficked and things. So I guess I've never really dwelt on it because I always thought, well, you know what, it could have been worse. But I think by thinking that way, I didn't deal with it. The same with the abusive relationships I've had or the abusive friendship. I've always thought, well, I've seen somebody be literally beaten within an inch of their life. It wasn't that bad for me, so it could be worse. But the thing is, I've never obviously just dealt with them myself. I've kind of downplayed it all the time. And I think over time, with then like my health and my daughter's health, the miscarriage, we recently lost someone that we loved very much to cancer that could have been avoidable probably if it wasn't for COVID. Just a lot of different things like that. Eventually you just snap, and I think it's because you've already harboured all this stuff here that you've not dealt with, that when these fresher things come on top, your mind already doesn't have the capacity for it, and eventually something is gonna snap. So I guess looking back, I wish I'd have not downplayed things and gone and got the therapy, gone and got the help, got out of the relationships, not compared them and gone, oh, it's not that bad, like I'm being a wuss, I should just stay, and to just leave. I should have just left. And you know, the same like friendships, you know, it's better to have no friends than have friends that when you need them are not there for you. And it's better to be alone than be with somebody who makes you feel like they're too ashamed to take you out, make you feel like you should change everything about yourself. You know, I can bring out anger in people, and I've had some of the worst things said to me that go through my head every day. And one of them was that they hoped that my tumour burst so that I would die. Things like that. And I think that I always excuse them because I always think, well, you know, I've pushed their buttons, but it's okay to admit that you were at fault as well, but it's never okay to then just think that you have to accept that and you can't be sad or you can't distance yourself. You can forgive people and you can still move on and cut that person out, or you can let them know that it's really not okay, and you can, you know, choose to take the time to heal from it. Just because they apologise doesn't make it go away. at all. So, you know, if you're kind of going through a lot of stuff right now, and it may not seem like the worst thing ever, oh hello Kiki Doe, and it may not seem like the worst thing ever, but there's a lot of different little things and you are feeling overwhelmed, don't downplay it. It may just be like maybe you need a little bit more self-care, a bit more me time, maybe your relationship isn't working. You know, if someone's like calling you stupid all the time or thick all the time or everything you do is wrong, you know, you do everything wrong, that can really eat away at you, and at some point something's going to happen where you are going to end up with a breakdown. And let me tell you, you don't want to be. I've been depressed before. I would happily take my depression before, when my daughter was 10 days old and I didn't want to be here and I went to a hotel room and was going to end it all. I'd go back to that place over where I am at the moment. I'm amazed I've made it 45 minutes in this video without being in tears. I think I was crying maybe 6-8 hours a day. And I don't mean just like a few tears, I mean literally just sobbing, like uncontrollable sobbing. And I always try and wait until my daughter's in bed to do that. So it's almost like the moment I hear her snoring, I'm gone for hours until I literally cry myself to sleep. And I don't really want that for anybody else. So I'm hoping that something good will come from this, and that, you know, if you are struggling with just a few things, just figure them out. You know, go get therapy if you're struggling with an eating disorder. Try and figure out why. Like, is it someone's feeding that into you, like telling you you're fat, or do you genuinely feel that way? And maybe take up exercise, maybe just eat healthy. If you're in a relationship, like I said, and someone's just nitpicking at you, they don't have to hit you, they don't have to call you names, they don't have to swear at you, take your phone off you, to mentally abuse you. You know, if you can't get anything right, then walk away. If, you know, you're struggling, if you're a new mom and you're struggling with breastfeeding, things like that, there's so much pressure. It doesn't matter. If your baby doesn't care where that milk comes from, as long as they're fed at the end of the day. You know, if you have things maybe in the past that you're bringing into new relationships, get therapy. Go to the GP. You can get therapy for free. Obviously you can pay for therapy. You could get therapy online, so you could choose your own therapist. But like I said, you know, we're fortunate here in the UK we have the NHS for now anyway. So yeah, just get help with whatever it is you're dealing with. You may feel like it's the most insignificant thing in the world, but it really might not be to you. Everyone's capacity to deal with things and everyone's thresholds are completely different. People I know wouldn't have gone through some of the things I've gone through and come out the other side. And I know people who've gone through things that I wouldn't have survived, not for a second. I know people who've lost their children, and I don't know how and they've gone on to have more children, and they're amazing parents, and they don't fall apart every second of the day. I don't know how they've done that. Not a clue. So just because you may confide in one person and they go, you're over exaggerating or you're being stupid, doesn't mean that you are. You get help for those little things so that you don't end up in a place where you're having a breakdown and your whole body's literally fighting against you when you're in A&E, because the stress is getting overwhelming that it's taking out on your body, and you're literally in therapy with medication being increased and you're getting PTSD because you haven't dealt with things. Although, as I said, in this society we seem to be praised and like you get a pat on the back for, you know, not taking a break and for being like superhuman and doing all this stuff, it's a load of BS. It's a load of BS. Most of those people are not happy. You know, that's why you get some of the most successful people in the world that seem to have these amazing lives and they do all this stuff. They end up taking their own lives because something is just eating away at them and they don't deal with it because they like the pat on the back. That one day it just becomes too much. My breakdown probably saved my life, because I think if I'd have had one more thing happen that had topped it, maybe I wouldn't be here now. So just, you know, please don't downplay anything that you're going through. Please don't feel like you can't reach out for help. It doesn't even have to be a professional. It could just be a really good friend. You can DM me. My Instagram is public, it's not private, so you can slide into my DMs. I talk to several people about stuff like this, so I'm always happy to talk to someone about it if I can help. Like I said, if I can have something positive come from this, and maybe someone's going, I am actually struggling, like I don't end up like that girl, and you go get a bit of help and it saves your life and makes your life happy, then it's worth what I've gone through. So it's been a long video. Like I said, I may not even post it. I'm just glad that I made it all the way to the end without crying. There were a few moments, but we got through it. So thank you for watching. I hope this hasn't triggered anything in anybody. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please go and find me on Instagram if you want to talk. I don't really catch up on the YouTube DMs as much, but if you want to catch up with me or you want to talk about anything, then head over to Instagram, and I will leave the link below or on the screen somewhere here. And you can message me anytime, and everything obviously stays confidential. And to those of you who have checked up on me on Instagram, like I said, some of you I've never met, we've talked for years, but literally only on social media, then thank you. The fact that you've even noticed I'm not posting, or some of you said that in like some of my selfies I looked a little ill, or I just didn't seem like my bright self. It's nice to know that you notice when I'm not around as much. It's nice to think that I add some form of value to your life or your day, or your social media day, that you even notice when I'm quiet. So thank you for that. That means a lot more than you probably think it does. And obviously if you're doing well and you've got this far, then great. But if you know someone that you think might be like kind of snapping all the time, or seem to zone out a lot, maybe they're excessively tired, or they're telling you that they're not getting any sleep, or they're not eating literally anything, or they're overeating, or they're drinking more than you've ever seen them drink, or they can't hold conversation, or they seem to have moments where they're like a mad hyper energy, getting loads done, and then the next minute they're just deflated, reach out, because they may be struggling and not, that to them may be normal life, but they're definitely struggling. So you may not be, but if you think anyone has any of those symptoms that I've described, just check in on them. You'd be surprised how much that can really help. So thank you for everyone that's checked in on me. Please subscribe. I'm hoping this will be the only video like this. I'm hoping the rest when they go back to my fun videos. I'll be doing my Christmas hauls from next week, so I'm hoping that will be it. That will brighten up my channel, and if I have an update, it will be a positive one where maybe I've found the cure for mental health or something. But yes, I promise there will be no more videos like this, I hope. So thank you, and I will see you in my next one.